Overnight on Tuesday this week, police surrounded one of the biggest Occupy encampments in the country at Occupy Philadelphia. The city had given the occupiers a deadline. The city waited 2 days past that deadline, but then the police moved in, chasing protesters for hours and making about 50 arrests. By daybreak, the Occupy encampment in Philly was over. That same night, hundreds of police surrounded Occupy Los Angeles, which was another of the largest protest sites in the country. In L.A., they too had stayed past the official deadline, but Tuesday night, the LAPD took down tents and handcuffed anybody who stayed. 200 arrests in all in Los Angeles. That leaves only a few big city occupations continuing now in the way we have been used to, meaning outdoor overnight encampments in tents with a 24-hour presence. Occupy San Francisco was told by the city of San Francisco that they had a deadline of noon today for getting out of the site they've been occupying. Mayor Ed Lee, though, says he has no plans for a police raid on the site. Occupy Boston, interestingly, has a court order preventing the city from kicking the protest camp out of Dewey Square in Boston. A judge today said she'll issue a decision on whether or not to change that order by December 15th. Occupy Washington, D.C. is camped out on land policed by the National Park Service. The D.C. City Council says they support them being there. And the Park Service says they can stay as long as they keep the occupation safe and clean. But even if you're allowed to occupy where you are, the occupation has effectively now become a movement on the move. In Washington, D.C. tonight, Occupy D.C. protesters were on the move from their encampment in McPherson Square to the site of a big-dollar fundraiser for House Democrats 2 blocks away. Dave Weigel from Slate.com posted these photos on Twitter tonight. The D.C. protesters say they wanted to send a message that their frustration with the political process is a bipartisan frustration. In Arizona this week, Occupy Phoenix protesters have been occupying a conference of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's a conservative corporate political organization that doesn't merely try to shape the legislation written at the state and local level by conservative politicians. ALEC often just writes the bills outright. The cops used pepper spray on the Occupy ALEC protesters. The occupiers say they were demonstrating peacefully when it happens. The police contend that they were provoked. And in New York City tonight, thousands of protesters, many of them union members, marched on Union Square. The Central Labor Council organizing a march for jobs and economic fairness today in conjunction with Occupy Wall Street, saying it was for everyone who is frustrated and worried about the growing economic disparity in this country. This movement has come a long way since the first big police crackdown more than a month ago in Oakland, California, when police fired on the crowd with tear gas and flash grenades. That night, a projectile, we still don't know exactly what kind, struck a 24-year-old young man named Scott Olsen in the forehead. It fractured his skull. What happened? Scott Olsen had previously served 2 tours in Iraq as a lance corporal in the United States Marine Corps. And as he put it, he had emerged physically unscathed from Iraq. But Scott Olsen was hurt that night in Oakland, California. He was really hurt. His name became a rallying cry even as he began his long march toward a full recovery. Last week, he was finally well enough to join Occupy Oakland again. And Scott Olsen joins us now tonight for the interview. Mr. Olsen, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's really nice to have you here. I've been looking forward to the chance to talk with you.
Thanks, Rachel. Great to be talking to you.
How is the recovery going so far? I can hear that your speech is different than it was before, but you're speaking clearly.
Yeah, it's different, and it seems to be getting better most days. Some days are better than others. Some days aren't. But I feel like I'm getting better.
The night that you were injured in Oakland, why had you gone to Occupy Oakland? What was motivating you to be there?
Well, I got off work and saw a tweet on Twitter, and that Occupy Oakland needed help. They needed support, and I went over there to join them.
Do you remember the injury or any of the time after the injury?
I remember the whole night. I remember getting to there. I remember standing with the other veteran, Josh, in Navy Blues. I remember even after I got hit, I remember people carrying me away and driving to the hospital. I remember just about everything.
Are you Are you angry about what's happened to you? Are you angry about what happened that night to the other protesters, but also to you in terms of this grievous injury?
I'm not happy about it at all. I wouldn't say I'm angry. It's hard to know where to direct the anger. But it's sad to see that it continued going on, and all our rights are being trampled upon.
Since you have been recovering, what's it been like to go back to Occupy Oakland?
It was quite a bit different. What's the first thing I noticed? But I was well received there, and I liked being back there.
As a former Marine, as an activist, as somebody who's obviously committed to this movement, what do you think tactically about the fact that so many of the encampments are getting kicked out of the public space that they have been occupying? Police raids happening all over the country. Do you think that an outdoor encampment is critical to keeping the pressure on, to getting your message out, or do you think that this thing evolves now?
I think it's in the process of evolving. Some cities' occupations might stick it out with an encampment. Some are gonna move on to taking over foreclosed homes. Some might go to internet-based occupational flash mobs. And I think they'll all be successful. They each have something that they bring to it.
Scott, I think that seeing what happened to you, particularly because there was so much cell phone footage, very personal handheld footage of people around you when it happened, people seeing what happened to you and knowing what happened to you and learning about your personal story, I think radicalized a lot of people. I think a lot of people went to Occupy events who wouldn't have gone had they not seen what happened to you. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I'm glad, I guess, that what happened to me got people more involved. If that's what it takes. I mean, it's sad that occupations have started out as politics and economics, and now it's turned into something more based on the rights, the freedoms that we were all told when we were growing up that we had as Americans.
As the movement goes on, you've obviously made a commitment now to speak out, even as you're continuing to recover from your injury. What do you hope happens? What do you? I mean, I know that there's been a lot of stupid discussion, frankly, on how specific people's demands should be and how how the strategy should proceed. But what do you want your fellow occupiers to accomplish? What do you think the movement can accomplish?
I want them, more than anything, is to get more people involved, because politics isn't something that you sit at home and go out once every few years and vote. And it's about creating a community with your people and sharing ideas and meeting people and learning their story.
Scott Olsen, Iraq War veteran, Occupy protester, thank you for your time. I really, I know it's a big deal and sort of an ordeal in order to do this sort of thing, and I really appreciate you speaking out, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, the best new thing in the world today, I have to tell you, is inarguable. Inarguable. I don't care if you disagree with me on everything I've ever said in my life. You will agree with me on this. It's coming up.